Truth in History with Charles A. Jennings.
Welcome to Truth in History. Today I would like to talk to you about a few things that I've been thinking about here lately. I don't necessarily have a sermon per se, but I'm sure that everyone is concerned about our nation. There's different ways of looking at our nation from a conservative standpoint, a liberal standpoint, the right and the left perspective, a worldly standpoint, a Christian standpoint, and even an enemy standpoint. Some of the people that you see on television that I consider part of the enemy, they say democracy is at stake. Our nation is going downhill. I don't know exactly what they want to maintain, but I guess they want to maintain status quo when they're in control. And our nation today is politically, morally, spiritually just as divided under President Trump as it was under Joe Biden. Has anything really changed as far as the fiber of the nation? The DNA of our nation, has it really changed? And what is going to make America great again? Now, I'll admit I voted for Mr. Trump. I sure didn't want to vote for the other side. That would have been just pure insanity. But what's going to make America great again if it ever becomes great again? Of which you may differ with me on my opinion, but I don't believe that it ever will. It will never be the nation that it was even in 1950. Definitely not the nation that it was in 1860 or before. Things fundamentally, basically, have changed. And I'm not going to go into all that in this talk today. I hope to someday point out the seeds of decay that were planted early in our nation. The seeds of decay. When the Constitution was written, it had a weakness. Our founding fathers had a weakness, as much as we revere them and the document that they wrote. But in order to make this nation great again, we keep hearing the phrase, we've got to return to God. What does that mean? If we really returned to God, we would have to go to this book that I'm holding in my hand. Not just some sentimental, emotional feeling inside of us when our president or some politician says, God bless America. That's not returning back to God. Where does Jesus Christ fit in to our nation? Where does Jesus Christ actually fit in to our institutions? Our religious, political, educational, moral life in this nation. Where does he fit? In Psalm 22 and verse 28, King David said, "The kingdom is the Lord's." The kingdom is the Lord's. Now back in his day, I'm sure he was referring to the Israelite kingdom that he was king over. And then he says, he is the governor among the nations, plural. The kingdom is the Lord's. That's the Israelite kingdom of the Old Testament. But the Lord is also the governor among the nations, plural. And when we look at Scripture, going all the way back to Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10. We see the flood of Noah has taken place, and we have 3 sons of Noah, and they were divided among the nations. The Lord is the governor among not only the nations, but among the races and among even nationalities. He never intended, I don't see it in the book, he never intended for there to be one cosmopolitan, metropolitan, or whatever word you want to use, hodgepodge of humanity mixed up together all over the earth. It's a natural thing for races to separate, for members of each respective race to separate unto their own kind and group. It's natural. God instituted that even among the 3 sons of Noah. And I know that most preachers don't talk about this, but I don't fit in the category of most preachers. They showed me the door. My denomination showed me the door a long time ago. It hurt, but it was the biggest thing, the best thing that they could have done for me. That way I can take the Word of God and read it and try to understand it without denominational oversight or boundaries. So we see in chapter 10 of the book of the beginnings, Genesis, it says, "These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth." And then it says, "the sons of Japheth." And it names the sons. And in verse 5 it says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles," or the nations, "divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families in their nations." all the Jephthaites stuck together as a group. And then the respective sons went different places. And then we see, starting in verse 6, the sons of Ham: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And it says, these are the sons of Ham, after their families, verse 20, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Now, different languages developed. And that's somewhat of a convoluted subject that scientists go into, that anthropologists go into, quite extensive, how language developed. But they developed different languages, different cultures, different characteristics, and even different looks. And starting in verse number 21, unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. And then it names those sons. And in verse 25 it says, for in his days was the earth divided. Now some people say that was geographically, the continents physically, geographically divided. I'm not sure if that's what it means or not. But I say that the people were divided. And in verse number 32, these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. You notice it says, these were the sons of Noah. We're only talking about the sons of Noah. We're not talking about the other people that were not sons of Noah. And you might say, well, I thought all men came from Noah. You know, the three major races came from Noah. Some people teach that. Well, to me, that's heresy. That's not true. So we're talking about the sons of Noah. Well, there's a commentary on this verse or passage in the book of Acts, chapter 17. Turning there, we read these words. In 17:24, God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither worship with men's hands as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed the bounds of their habitation. He's talking about the three sons of Noah, hath made of one blood, one Noah, one wife, all the sons or the nations that came out of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and grandsons, and he determined their habitation. God determined their habitation. The Lord himself determined that. He is the governor among the nations, according to King David, Psalm 22, verse 28. So we're talking about anthropology here. Let's keep in mind that the Bible is a spiritual book, but it's also a book of anthropology. Anthropology. Genesis chapter 11. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there, and they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. Now they dwelt in the land of Shinar. If you go back to chapter 10 and verse 12, it says, And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So these were Cushites from Ham. Cushites from Ham that went east, and they built the Tower of Babel. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city, and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name. In other words, a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Verse 8, So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. The Lord scattered them and confounded the tongue. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of the dividing of the nations. Chapters 10 and 11. It was the Lord's doings. And he had to change their tongue. In other words, it was not God's will. If we read the book here and find an exegesis of the story, God's design was not for all men to be mingled with one another and have one big race of men. Number two, he did not want them to have one language. You see, there's what divides us. Borders divide us, and also language divides us. And language is one of the factors that help develop culture. Language and culture, they go together. And regulated borders. That's what God says in His Word. You know, you hear the phrase all the time. I've heard it many times. Well, there's only one race of men on the earth. How foolish. We hear that from preachers mainly that are trying to pacify and ingratiate themselves with their congregation, and also through the back door tell the authorities, I'm not a racist. That's what they're trying to do. No, God created the races. The Oriental race, the black race, the white race, He created them. But here we're talking just about the sons of Noah. He divided them in their respective land, respective cultures, respective language. I think it's clear in the book. Here lately, I've been thinking about Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. It's the chapter that deals with the image, the great image. And Nebuchadnezzar's dream of this image. And he called in the wise men, and they couldn't give an answer. They didn't know what it meant. So finally, here comes Daniel. Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. Thou, O king, Daniel speaking, sawest and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, one of the most precious elements on the planet. His breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, a stone, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold, broken in pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the earth. So we've got gold, a gold kingdom, a silver kingdom, a brass kingdom, and an iron and clay kingdom. And the next kingdom was a stone kingdom. And this stone kingdom smote the image on the feet. And that stone began to grow and became a kingdom. And it filled the whole earth. And then in verses 36 and following, he says, King, thou art the King of kings. O King, thou art a King of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom. The God of heaven gave Nebuchadnezzar a kingdom. Thou art the head of gold. And then, verse 39, after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior. And that was the Medo-Persian, 2 arms of silver. And then the third kingdom, belly and thighs of brass, which came the Grecian kingdom, Alexander the Great. And then the legs of iron and clay, which was the pagan Rome system. Pagan Rome. Now, what did each one of these kingdoms give us? Each one of these four kingdoms gave us something that we're living with today. Now we know that after the pagan system, pagan Rome fell, there arose a papal Rome, centered in Rome, but headed up by the dynasty of popes. So we had pagan Rome and then papal Rome for about 1,260 years. But those four kingdoms of Babylon, Medo-Persia, which was a dual kingdom, Greece and Rome, each gave us something that is in our culture today. Babylon lasted from 606 BC to 536 BC. Babylon gave us the humanistic money system. Study it, folks. It's very obvious in history. Study it from a secular standpoint. Usury became the norm in money lending. It was forbidden in the Old Testament. But the Old Testament Mosaic system of God's law, or true Hebraic system, died at the destruction of Jerusalem in 596 BC. And Talmudism came out of Babylon. And the money system came out of Babylon. You know, we use the word, when you're counting money, tally up your money, count your money. That came out of Babylon because they had a tally stick that they marked as they counted their money. Well, the next kingdom was the Medo-Persian, breast and arms of silver. They gave us a humanistic law system. Remember the phrase, the law of the Medes and the Persians cannot be changed. Once it was made, it cannot be changed. They circumvented the law of God. They circumvented the law of God. Philosophies of men. And those philosophies were not only just secular, but they mingled with religious philosophy. They took the Old Testament, the rabbis took the Old Testament, true Mosaic Hebrewism, and mixed it with their own ideas and came up with rabbinical Judaism. Rabbinical Judaism is anything that the rabbi says it is at any given moment. The third kingdom, which was the Grecian kingdom, gave us humanistic philosophy. Humanistic philosophy. Humanistic money system, humanistic law, now humanistic philosophy. And what did the fourth kingdom give us? Humanistic religion. It covered all the bases. That's what we are living with today. Now, Rome, well, let me give you the dates of these things once again. Babylon existed from 606 to 536 BC. Medo-Persia, 536 to 330 BC. The Grecian kingdom lasted from 330 to 146 BC. Then the pagan Rome lasted from 146 BC to 476 AD. Rome lasted the longest. But pagan Rome morphed into papal Rome. It's a long story. It went from bishops over individual churches to a regional bishop over several churches. And then that bishop of Rome eventually became Papa, or the Pope. And it lasted for 1,260 years approximately. And what are we living with today in our American system? Now, you may think, well, you may think that I'm anti-American, of which I'm not. But we must realize that there were cracks in the foundation when this nation was built. We can put a halo over the head of every one of our forefathers, American forefathers. And they were great men. They were intelligent men. But there were cracks in the foundation because they had some faulty ideas. They had some great ideas. But it only takes one drop of poison or pollution to ruin a glass of pure water. That's all it takes. And that glass of water is no longer pure. Going back to Daniel chapter 2. You notice it says in verse 35, "And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the earth." In verse 34, it says that that stone was cut out without hands. What was it cut out of? In order for it to grow and become a kingdom. So let's go to verse 44, Daniel chapter 2. "And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom." In the days of these kings. He set up his kingdom way back under King David. When Israel came out of Egypt, they came out as a tribal group. There were 12 tribes. They came out. At Mount Sinai, they became a nation under Moses. But they never became a kingdom until David was anointed. Saul was anointed as a captain, but he didn't last. But when God anointed David, he said, your kingdom shall be forever. So God set up an Israelite kingdom. Back then under David, and the definition of a kingdom, it has 5 component parts: people, land, law, throne, and king. God instituted people, his land, his law, his throne, his king. And it says, and in the days of these kings, while those kingdoms, those secular kingdoms existed, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. So in other words, that kingdom must be in existence today. It may be in abeyance. It may be squashed. Which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. In other words, the people that God established the kingdom with. That seed line is going to possess the kingdom throughout. It's not going to be given to someone else, to another people. But it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Verse 45, and forasmuch as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain. Wait a minute. The stone was cut out of something and became a great mountain. But here it says, the stone was cut out of the mountain. We can go back and say, if we go back to Genesis, God promised Abraham a family, a kingdom. And he said, kings shall come out of thee. So that was the potential mountain. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc., that was the potential mountain. And that stone, now who was that stone? Forasmuch as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold. It named them in reverse: Rome, Greece, Medo-Persia, Babylon. It struck the image. The great God hath made known to the king which shall come to pass herever, and the dream is certain, the interpretation thereof sure. So in the days of Rome, there was a stone that came. There was a stone that appeared. In Genesis 49, verse 24, it says, from thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. That is none other than the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the stone that smote the feet and the clay kingdom, which was Rome, because he lived during the Roman Empire. But when he smote Rome, the whole image fell. And his kingdom grew, and it's still growing, and it has become a mountain in the earth. Oh, yes, it's been polluted. It's been mingled among the people, and a lot of birds and the fowls of the air have lodged in its branches, Jesus said, Matthew 13. But the kingdom is still in existence. And President George Walker Bush he talked about the New World Order. I don't know exactly what he had in mind. And I've read a lot of things where writers have tried to interpret what he meant, that there's going to be a new world order, a one world order, one money system, one religion, one race, one language, one of everything, one government. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Why? Because the Lord is the governor among the nations, and He separated them. He separated the different races. Yes, the main races. The white race, the Oriental race, the black race. He separated them. He even separated Israel, according to the book of Deuteronomy. He separated Israel. And when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when He separated the sons of Adam, He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. That is Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. Man's idea is to bring about one race, one religion, one government, one money system. It's not going to happen, because the fifth kingdom in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, was the stone kingdom. And it smote, chronologically, it smote the Roman kingdom in the feet, because it was mixed with clay. It was weak. Iron and clay doesn't mix. It was weak. And that iron and clay has been interpreted different ways. But you see, man is made of the earth, clay, dust. And when Rome, imperial Rome, pagan Rome, they went, it was the largest of all the four kingdoms. Every one of those kingdoms, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, each one of them successively became larger than the preceding one. And Rome was the largest. It went all the way up to the Scotland line. And Hadrian, the emperor, built the wall. You can go there. You can touch the wall. One side of that wall is about 10 feet thick. One side is Scotland, and the other one is England, just north of Carlisle, the city of Carlisle, England. It expanded. It took in so many people. It weakened itself by immigration. Historians will tell you that. It weakened itself. See, the clay part They took in this people and that people and this people and that people. They said all roads lead to Rome. We are the master builders. But it collapsed. And the kingdom, the culture, the civilization that we see in the world today is going to collapse. You say, well, you're not very optimistic. Well, I see a nation such as America with a wonderful history. You can read the history and be thrilled. Be thrilled. But you can also read the history and weep. You can read the history and weep. Because we have fallen into the depths of iniquity. I don't need to try to reiterate all the filth that comes out of the sewers of this country. Even the religious sewer pots. I don't need to do that. You know that. You see it on the evening news every night. Anybody that has a half a brain in one eye can see that this nation is not going to be made great again just by making some domestic changes, economic, etc. It's going to take repentance. Well, we all believe that in the end time that there's a wicked civilization on the earth. But you know, it dawned on me back in the 90s when I went to Russia holding some evangelistic meetings in 3 or 4 cities in Russia, that America produces moral filth and then pumps it to the rest of the world. And it was over there. It didn't take long after the wall fell that America's filth peddlers the Jewish-owned media began to pump their filth over there because it was a new market. Revelation chapter 17 tells us this. Verse 9. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen. One is, the other one is not yet. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even as he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. See, it's a prediction. And some of this has already taken place in history, that every one of those kingdoms fell. Chapter 14 of Revelation, verse 8, there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen. Why didn't it say Rome, Greece, Medo-Persia? Because all those four are incorporated into one, known as Babylon. Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So you say, what is your prediction? I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet. I don't fly to heaven and talk to some angel up there and get a special message and come back and say, watch my channel because I've got a special message from Angel X. The message that I have comes out of the same book that you have. And it says, Babylon is going to fall. This sinful Babylonian empire that the United States government has become is going to fall. Sooner or later, it's going to fall. And it's been falling. It's not just going to fall overnight, but there's a crack here and a crack there in the foundation, and then a crack in the wall, then a crack in the roof, and it's coming down. Why? Because we are not recognizing that Jesus Christ, that stone, when He died, when He came, when He died, when He rose again, and when He ascended above all principalities and powers. And our nation has not given Him the proper official recognition as the builder and the owner of the kingdom and the governor among the nations. It's not enough to say, well, we've got to return to God. God has rules called law. Unless we follow His law, we're not returning to Him. Because law, the principle of law, is the expression of His attributes. This is who I am. That's what He's saying. Thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that. Jesus Christ is coming back. And Paul, the apostle, said that He's coming back in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God and that obey not the gospel of Jesus Christ. We better get ready. If you've never received a magazine from this ministry, you may contact us. We'll be more than willing to put you on the mailing list, absolutely for free. So the Lord bless you. Look up, for our redemption draweth nigh, because the governor among the nations is coming, and He's going to fix the mess that man has created. God bless you.